Welcome to 80s horror stories, where the past is never truly gone, it waits. Tonight's story is not about a haunted house. It is about a door. A door that did not open outward like every door should. It opened inward, as if the house itself was trying to keep something contained. And what was behind that door was never meant to be seen. The house stood at the far end of Willow Creek Road, separated from the rest of the town by a stretch of land that seemed deliberately untouched. No fences. No neighbors. No signs of life. Just a narrow dirt path that led toward it like a forgotten memory. Locals didn't call it by its address. They called it the Hollow House. Not because it was abandoned, but because they believed something inside it was not. I arrived there in the fall of 1892, under a sky that felt heavier than it should have been. The letter that brought me there had been brief. No name. No return address. Just a single sentence written in uneven ink. The house is yours now, but the door must remain closed. There was no explanation of ownership. No legal document. Nothing that made sense. And yet, the key had been inside the envelope. Cold. Old. Real. I should have walked away. Anyone would have. But there is something about unanswered questions that lingers in the mind. It grows. It pulls. And eventually, it leads you exactly where you should not go. The moment I stepped inside the house, I felt it. Not fear. Not yet. But a stillness so unnatural that it made my breathing feel out of place. The air did not move. The silence was not empty. It was occupied. Each step I took echoed faintly, but what unsettled me more was the timing. The floor creaked just before my foot touched it, as if the house anticipated my movement rather than reacted to it. The walls were lined with portraits, their frames coated in a thin layer of dust. The people in them were dressed in old-fashioned clothing, their expressions distant and unreadable. But their eyes, many of them were scratched out. Not faded, not worn, removed. Deliberately, I paused in front of one portrait longer than I should have. A woman stood beside a window, her face almost entirely intact, except for the eyes. The surface where they should have been was gouged deeply, unevenly, as if someone had taken their time making sure they were gone. I moved on. The deeper I went into the house, the more it felt as though I was not alone. Not in the way one imagines ghosts or shadows, but in a quieter, more unsettling way. Like being observed from somewhere that does not reveal itself. The hallway where I found the door was narrower than the rest of the house. The light didn't reach it properly, even during the day. It felt distant, somehow. Like the house extended further in that direction than it should have. And at the end of that hallway was the door. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, wooden, aged, slightly warped from time. But the longer I looked at it, the more details revealed themselves. There was no handle on the outside, no keyhole, no way to open it from where I stood. I stepped closer. The hinges were set inside the frame. At first, it was just a detail, the kind your mind notices but does not immediately understand. Something subtle, something easy to ignore. But then the realization began to form. Slowly, uncomfortably. It settled into my thoughts like a weight pressing downward, refusing to be dismissed. The door opened inward. Not outward. Not the way doors are meant to open in houses built for living, for safety, for escape. This one did the opposite. It did not allow anything to leave. It allowed something to be contained. It was not meant to keep something out. It was built to keep something in. That understanding did not come with fear at first. It came with silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to stretch through the hallway, as if even the house itself was waiting for me to fully grasp what I was looking at. My eyes drifted across the surface of the wood, and that was when I noticed the marks more clearly. Not scratches, not damage. Marks. Deep grooves carved into the door in overlapping layers, cutting across one another with no clear pattern, yet somehow still deliberate. Some had softened with time, their edges worn smooth, as if years had tried, and failed, to erase them. Others were different, sharper, cleaner. Recent. So recent that small splinters of wood still clung to the edges, fragile and loose, as though they had only just been torn away. I stepped closer without realizing it. Drawn in. My breathing slowed, not out of calm, but out of something quieter. Focus. They were not random. They were desperate, repeated, intentional. Each mark carried the same direction, the same force, the same silent message. Something had stood here, for a long time, trying. Again and again, I raised my hand. I don't know why. There was no reason to touch it, no logic behind the impulse. And yet, it felt necessary. My fingers hovered just inches from the surface, close enough to feel the faint chill radiating from the wood, a cold that did not belong to the air around me. For a moment, I hesitated. Something about the door resisted contact. Not physically, but instinctively. As if some part of me understood that touching it would mean acknowledging it, and once acknowledged, it would acknowledge me back. That was when the voice broke the silence behind me. You shouldn't stand too close. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The stillness of the hallway carried it with unnatural clarity, as if the sound had been placed directly into the space rather than spoken into it. I turned sharply, too quickly, my pulse rising before my thoughts could catch up. A man stood at the far end of the hallway, still, watching. I had not heard him approach. Not a footstep, not a breath. And I was certain, completely certain, that the hallway had been empty moments before. He did not move closer. He did not seem surprised to see me. If anything, his presence felt like something that had always been there, waiting for me to notice. He was thin, unnaturally so. His posture slightly bent, as though time, or something heavier than time, had pressed down on him for years. His skin was pale in a way that did not suggest illness, but absence, as if he spent more time in shadow than in light. But it was his eyes that unsettled me most. Not because of how they looked, but because of how they avoided. They shifted subtly, never quite meeting mine, as if direct eye contact required something he was unwilling to give, or unable to. There was a long pause between us, the kind that stretches too far, the kind that makes silence feel intentional. Then, finally, he spoke again. I didn't expect anyone to come this far into the house, this soon. His voice was steady, too steady, like someone who had said these words before, or had been waiting to say them. He introduced himself as Mr. Hale, the caretaker. The word lingered in my mind longer than it should have. Caretaker of what? The house? Or something inside it? I asked him how long he had been there. Not because I needed the answer, but because I needed to hear him speak again, to confirm that he was real, that I wasn't alone. Long enough, he replied. Nothing more. No detail. No explanation. Just enough to end the question without answering it. My attention shifted back to the door. I gestured toward it, my hand moving slower this time. More cautious, more aware. What is behind it? The question felt heavier than it sounded, as if the act of asking it had already crossed some kind of line. Mr. Hale did not respond immediately. The silence returned, but this time, it felt different. Thicker, tighter. I noticed then that he was no longer looking away. His gaze had settled, not on me, but on the door, on the marks, on the place where my hand had almost touched, and for the first time since I had seen him, his expression changed. Only slightly. But enough. Enough to tell me that whatever was behind that door was not something he feared. It was something he understood. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the marks on the wood, his expression tightening slightly. That door doesn't lead down, he said quietly. It leads deeper. I asked him what that meant. He shook his head. Some things in this house were not built for people to understand, he said. And that door is one of them. I wanted to press further, but something in his tone made it clear the conversation was over. That night, sleep did not come easily. The house had a presence to it. Not loud. Not aggressive, but constant. Like a thought that refuses to leave your mind. Hours passed in silence. Then, sometime after midnight, I heard it. A slow, heavy sound. It wasn't a knock. It wasn't scratching. It was pressure. A dull, rhythmic force pressing against something solid. I sat up, holding my breath. The sound came again, from the hallway. From behind the door. I stepped out of my room and moved carefully toward it, each step feeling louder than it should have been. The closer I got, the clearer the sound became. Something was leaning against the door. Not striking it. Not trying to break it. Testing it. As if learning its strength. I stood there for what felt like minutes, unable to move, unable to look away. Then, it stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I did not open the door that night. Morning brought no comfort. If anything, the house felt more aware. The hallway seemed narrower than before. The air heavier. And the walls. The walls near the door were different. At first, I thought it was the light. A trick of shadow. But the longer I looked, the more certain I became. They were not still. There was a subtle movement beneath the surface. A shifting that did not belong to wood or plaster. I stepped closer. Slowly, cautiously, I placed my hand against the wall. For a brief moment. Something pressed back. I pulled away instantly, my heart racing. That should have been enough. That should have been the moment I left. But instead, I searched for answers. Upstairs, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, I found a collection of journals. They belonged to a man named Edgar Whitmore. The writing varied from calm and structured to frantic and barely legible. The entries grew more erratic over time, the sentences shorter, the words more desperate. One line appeared again and again. The walls are not walls. He described discovering a space beneath the house that did not follow the rules of normal architecture. Not simply a basement. Not a hidden room. But something, misaligned. A place where measurements could not be trusted. Where a step forward did not always mean getting closer. Where corridors seemed to stretch when you looked directly at them, and contract when you turned away. A place where distance changed. Where sound moved incorrectly. Where a whisper from far away could reach your ear as if it had been spoken just behind you, and your own voice, when you spoke, felt delayed, like it had to travel through something thick before it could exist. Where the walls were not barriers, but something else, something that did not separate space, but contained it, or worse, something that observed what was inside it. The final entries were difficult to read, not because the ink had faded, but because the writing itself had begun to lose its structure. Letters overlapped, words trailed into each other, sentences broke apart as if the hand that wrote them no longer trusted what it was seeing, or what it was becoming. One line had been written over and over again, each time deeper, harder, cutting into the paper itself. He is learning the shape of me. Another followed beneath it, uneven, almost carved rather than written. It is not trapped. And then, at the very bottom of the final page, barely legible, as if written in a moment of complete surrender. It is waiting. I did not realize how long I had been standing there, holding the journal, rereading those words as if they might change. But they didn't. They stayed the same. And somehow, that made them worse. That night, the sound returned. Not gradually. Not faintly. But with a presence that felt immediate. Stronger. Closer. More certain. The door trembled under the pressure from the other side. Not violently. Not like something trying to break through. But steadily. Deliberately. As if whatever was behind it had learned patience. And no longer needed force. I stood in the hallway again, staring at it. The air felt heavier than before. Thicker. Harder to breathe. As if the space itself had begun to change in response to something unseen. This time, I felt something else. Not just fear. Fear is sharp, immediate, easy to understand. This was different. Recognition. A slow, creeping awareness that settled into my thoughts like something returning to a place it had been before. As if whatever was behind that door, knew I was there. Not in a general sense. Not as a presence. But specifically, intentionally. As if it had been waiting for me, watching, learning, and now, understanding. And worse, waiting for me to understand it. I don't know what made me do it. Even now, I try to explain it to myself, to assign reason where there was none. Maybe it was the journal. Those final words, repeating in my mind like something unfinished. Maybe it was the sound. That slow, measured pressure that felt less like a threat, and more like an invitation. Or maybe, it was never my decision to begin with. Maybe. It wanted me to. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. Each movement felt heavier than the last, as if I were walking through something unseen. Something that resisted, but did not prevent. I reached the door. Up close, the scratches looked deeper, more defined, as if time had passed differently for them. Or as if something had added to them, recently. My hands lifted slowly, almost against my will. The wood in front of me felt colder than the rest of the house. Not naturally cold. But empty. Like it did not hold warmth at all. For a moment, my fingers hovered just above the surface. And in that brief hesitation, I felt it. Something on the other side. Move. Not away. But closer. Mirroring. Waiting. I should have pulled back. I should have stepped away. But instead, I pressed my hands against the door. And it resisted. Not like a locked door. Not like something sealed. But like something was holding it shut from the other side. Not like a locked door. Like something was holding it shut. Then slowly, it moved. A deep, unnatural cold rushed out from the opening. I looked inside. There were no stairs. No floor. Only walls. Endless walls stretching into darkness. Covered in marks. Claw marks. Handprints. Words carved deep into the surface. Do not let it see you. I stepped inside. The walls felt wrong. Not solid. Soft. Shifting. Alive. Shapes moved beneath the surface. Faces pressed outward, distorted and silent. Then. They turned. Toward me. The door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed endlessly. The walls shifted closer. The faces stretched, their features twisting as if trying to break through. And then I heard it. A voice. Everywhere. You opened it, so now it knows you. The walls began to change. The marks rearranged. New words formed. Slowly. Deliberately. My name. I don't remember how I escaped. Only that I woke up outside the house. The door closed. The hallway silent. But something had changed. Even now, I feel it. Not in the house. Not in the walls. But near me. Watching. Learning. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is still, I feel pressure. Not around me, but behind me. As if something is standing just out of sight. Waiting. Making space. For me. This has been 80s horror stories. And remember. Some doors are not built to be opened. Because what they hold back is not trying to escape. It is waiting, for you to let it in.